Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Life Work Podcast. This is where we talk about the stories and experiences of people crafting, pursuing, creating joy and meaning for themselves and others through their passions, through their work. Today, we have Alice Tang here, and I love this topic because it's a topic that has been super touchy for me my entire life, and it's about money. Money, joy, and meaning. I don't think I've really ever put money and joy and meaning in the same sentence before. And more recently, I've been seeing a lot more speakers, a lot more literature out there around how money really is an essential part of our life, a part of our happiness. Alice Tang here is a financial advisor. She's been in the industry for at least 20 years. She's also a public speaker, and she works also with people one-on-one or on a 1-to-2, as she says. So I'll let Alice introduce herself, and then we'll get started talking about money and you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show here. I'm Alice Tang, an immigrant from Hong Kong, 25 plus years ago. For the last 20 years, I have only one career, one business is financial advising business. My firm is BPG Wealth Management in Clackamas, Oregon. We are a multi-generation, diversified, and full-service financial firm, serving both businesses and individuals. And thank you for having me.
Of course. Tell us a little bit about I think you called it a side hustle of public speaking. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did that come about?
Well, about 12 years ago, I was asked to talk about finance. And not to the extent of, the detail of of any stock market or how should we save, but really about the concept of money and how we relate to money. Because if we can fix that, the rest doesn't mean anything to anyone.
Yeah.
So of course, I embraced the opportunity and said yes. And then I said, wait, what am I going to deliver? So I put together a concept or a picture, hand drawn, not a perfect painter, but later on the audience can see. Is about first have courage, create confidence create wealth, and wealth we can define it differently. It could be wealth of health, the wealth of relationship, and then the wealth in our pocket. Money is only useful and meaningful if we have those, right? If we don't, what's money for? If you are very sick on a deathbed or cannot travel anywhere and no close relationship, you're alone. I don't know many people like that situation, even they have a lot of money.
Yeah. No, that's a really great way of describing it. And by the way, I don't know what you're saying, but your drawing looks beautiful. So I think it's great. You say you're not a great drawer. I think it looks lovely. It's really artistic. It's really interesting you talk about relationships here, because I think oftentimes what I've heard described is when people ask, what's your relationship with money? And I can't remember when was the first time somebody asked me that or just asked that question. I heard it. And I thought it was at first a really strange question. Like, what do you mean relationship with money? Like, money is not an entity, but in some ways it is, right? Like, for example, growing up, I was taught that money was very dirty, right? Dirty in the sense that it was physically dirty. As soon as I touched money, I had to wash my hands, right?
There is COVID there.
Yeah, there was a hygienic concern with money. Like you don't really want to touch money because it's so dirty. But I think it was also symbolic in a sense of there's contamination with money. But at the same time, money is something you also want to pursue. So I often think about what's my relationship with money growing up. And I think it's like being pulled between two worlds again of, on one hand, it's something you don't really want to get close to. But on the other hand, it's something you want to have more of. It's like a paradox situation. And I often think about how money is seen and treated and just, the money practices here in America. And I think it's also very different across the world. So I'm kind of curious about what your take is on the relationship and money piece.
That take me back to one of the principle I live by. Beyond water and oxygen, And of course, we have toilet papers, right, today.
Yes.
Money and relationship are the two necessity
Mm.
I believe we cannot live without.
Mm.
In the past two,
Okay.
3 decades, especially since I become an advisor in the money world,
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that if we can take care of all the most important
Yeah.
relationships in our life, the money piece can easily be taken care of.
Mm.
And one of the relationships, which is pertaining to our conversation today, is what's your relationship with money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I like to take our audience to think about the following few questions.
Okay.
First, what is your first memory of money?
Mm.
Okay, so my first memory of money is I was given a 10 cents in Hong Kong dollars and allow me to go freely into a store, the candy stores, that we can buy any candy, what type,
Mm-hmm.
using the 10 cents. So that was embedded into my head, my mind here, history,
Yep.
right? So what does it mean to me when I explore deeper is money can buy things.
Mm-hmm.
What is more importantly, I have the freedom to do anything I want.
Yeah.
Okay. Another friend that I have, I asked the same question. You know what happened to him? He said he was given the same 10 cents when he was growing up at a similar age.
Mm-hmm.
But he went into the store and looked at all the options.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't decide. He came out of the store. He was so mad. He threw his 10 cents into the garbage can.
Wow.
Money really created a lot of stress for him.
Mm.
So we're still kids, same age, same era, we're growing up. But we have two different ways of perceiving money already.
Yeah.
For a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, the first time you remember money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the second thing I think we want to go deeper is think about a story or a situation when money creates joy.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that and write it down. And how about think about a situation when money really caused a lot of pain. I mean, unfortunately for me, is when a situation when money really caused a lot of pain, when I was told that I was a burden in my marriage, not by my spouse, but by a third party very close to us, that become my strength, my motivation of being in charge, being financially independent, and having the financial freedom. So I will never be a burden to anyone.
Yeah. That's so rude to say. Are you still in touch with this person who said that?
You know what? I am coming at peace. I'm in touch. And I just feel that perhaps that's how I received the message. You know how it goes, Wendy. The same message, the same tone, the same person to say to you when your emotion is at a different level. And obviously, my emotion was at the bottom, right? My ego was at the bottom. I'm going to perceive and take that same message differently.
Mm-hmm.
And when that message hit me, I don't think it's this person who said that. It's about Alice. I need to go inside and take a look. I was at a very low ego, bad place of my emotion.
Mm.
So that, it's nothing to do with, remember, people throw the ball, you don't need to catch it.
Yeah.
And I caught it. And I look at it. I got mad at it. And what does it do? For many years, it has been my motivation, negative motivation, right? But still propel me to continue to go, to be financially independent that we talked about. But one day, I call this thought process that come to me every day, Sally.
Mm.
So Sally came back, my memory. This one day, I was strong enough. I was confident enough. I said, you know what, Sally, thank you for serving me for so many years. I got to where I'm at. Please go.
Mm.
never came back again, except for when I'm preparing for my presentation, my public speaking, because I need to reiterate that story to a very long extent, if it's long presentation, or short extent like today.
Yeah.
It will come back to me. But it never waver me emotionally anymore. I'm better. I'm stronger. I'm independent of that memory.
Yeah. That is such a good story of self-awareness and taking feedback. So for folks who are watching this, if you remember my second episode with Dr. Tracy Adams, we talked a lot about, self-awareness and taking the feedback that you need and that resonates. And it seems like that's what you did, right? You took what was useful but you also in a way externalize it, knowing that it's not really you, right? It's just something that motivated you. And when it was finished serving its purpose, you let it go.
Yes. And sometimes, family or friends did not mean to say certain things certain way. It's how we perceive it. We frame it the way we want to frame it. We have responsibility too. It could be super good intention, but you know what? I didn't take it that way.
Good. Yeah. Awesome. You got something out of it too.
Yes.
Yeah. So were those all the questions you were having people think about?
Yes. When it first come to me in a consultation situation or just a candid conversation, and people say, well, how do you do this? And I just ask them, think about you first, because everybody do it differently.
Yeah. I like that you were starting again with, yourself, because that's kind of a theme that's been a theme unintentionally throughout all my different podcast conversations, is that, whichever topic we're on, whoever I'm talking to, and they come from all walks of life, really some of the lessons start with, you got to know yourself. You have to know about you and practice self-awareness. So I think it's really interesting. I love that story you shared about you going to the candy store with 10 cents versus your friend going in there and being frustrated, right? So I don't know if it's like serendipity or what. I saw a quote yesterday and I loved it and I shared it with a friend. And tell me what you think. So the quote says, money can't buy you happiness if you don't know what you want.
That's so true. So let's define happiness.
Yeah. Let's
define happiness. And it's unique to each one of us. My happiness does not equal to your happiness. Does not equal to my parents' happiness or my siblings or my spouse's happiness. But knowing yourself is the first place of wisdom. Somebody said that. I think this quote is great.
Yeah.
So know what makes you happy. And also be flexible, because as you go through life, I'm sitting in my late 50s. Mm-hmm. What made me happy or has made me happy in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, even my early 50s is different from today.
Yeah.
And just know that it's not like I told everybody if I have this, I will be happy. Well, you don't need to be a woman. You can change your mind.
Yeah.
So what makes you happy, Wendy? Right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a question I've been thinking about lately, and which is why I've anchored a lot of my thought leadership and my messages out there on joy and meaning. For me, that's essentially how I'm defining happiness. For me, is that the things I do, the things in my life, need to bring me those feelings of satisfaction, feelings of just those positive emotions of those peaks of elation, the things that I enjoy doing, having fun. But all those in a vacuum would also be tiring, right? It's like if someone loves a roller coaster, but they're on the roller coaster for 24/7, it's going to get boring at some point. It's going to get, it's going to get old. So what adds more value to all that fun and the laughter that come with those activities is if they are meaningful. And the way I'm defining meaning is, am I creating some positive impact for other people? Am I seeing a positive impact in not just what the feeling creates for me, but in a way that maybe it helped somebody do something. It helped them meet their potential, or it helped me make me feel, or even going back to the self, right? It gives me meaning just because it makes me feel like I am doing more than just, going in vineyards and having fun. I'm doing something that makes me feel that I'm contributing value. So that's been my definition of happiness.
That's good. That's good. I think COVID-19 has made many of us pause and think, because now that a lot of us are still working remotely, although our state and our country is gradually reopening, we should, because for the economy, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, depending on when you started this work from home deal, 8 to 10 weeks, we really are forced to pause.
Yeah.
And think about what matters.
Exactly.
Because we were like, pre-COVID, we were go, 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 go. What is my next? What is my next? What is my next?
Yeah, it's like a rat race. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when I finally get down to the dining table, eat dinners, I'm so tired.
Mm-hmm.
Can I finish eating and go to bed? You have no time to reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we had kind of touched based on related to what we're saying about happiness is, that money, oftentimes you hear the term, money can't buy you happiness, right? I mean, I just saw this quote that kind of spinned it around and said, well, it can if you know what you want. But at the core of it, I think a lot of us were brought up thinking money can't buy you happiness. Because, you look at some people who are really rich, who have a lot of money, and they aren't necessarily happier than you. And then you look at some people who are living in poverty and their life satisfaction is actually maybe just as high or even higher. And I think it was a few years ago, there was some study done by these psychologists who looked at the connection between money and happiness or life satisfaction. And they said, on one hand, yes, money can make you happier because money can buy, gives you the ability to pay your rent or, buy food and just give you the necessities of life, right? But up to a certain point, it's not going to do anything more. So they were able to show the chart of the amount of money that people made and correlating that to their reported life satisfaction. And you see that the connection goes up, right? The more money people made, the happier they were until a certain point, right? After that point, that amount of money, it kind of stayed the same and, it didn't really change much. So you worked with a lot of people over the last 20 years. What have you observed in others around their life satisfaction, their happiness, and with money?
Thank you for asking that question. Yes, there is a lot of people we work with and observe, how money has done for them. The bottom line for me, though, I think money definitely can buy happiness. Just like part of the study that you shared just now. Think about the last thing you want to accomplish. Okay, we can go to any restaurant, we can go on a cruise. Okay,
Yeah.
We got this. But how about somebody who is raising children and be able to help part of the college expense?
Mm-hmm.
That's happiness, because seeing your next generation achieve is joyful, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about people who are trying to save their best to buy their first home.
Mm-hmm.
They give up, lunches. They bring lunch boxes, right?
Yeah.
You have to cut how many lunches. You can go, to places, maybe travel, road trip only, not in COVID, but pre-COVID. All those. So I'd say a big percentage of what you're thinking about doing for yourself and for others, especially your loved ones, costs money. Okay?
Yeah.
So money can buy happiness that way. For me, money buys time.
Yeah.
I'm not domestic. So I don't like to do the cleaning work. If somebody can come help me and I can pay for it in exchange for the great service, why not? And I'm helping the economy too.
Yeah. I really like that you make that connection with time, because it wasn't until maybe a few years ago, right, that it finally clicked for me that time is money. Because before that, I heard that term and it was very conceptual, and I thought, yeah, that I guess makes sense. It seemed philosophical. I didn't really know viscerally what that meant. And it was until maybe a few years ago when I really got started in my career and I became really busy. And like you say, by the time you get down to dinner, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted and I don't really want to do anything, right? And I may only have like an hour to sit on the couch and watch TV and then go to bed. So it's at that point where it really clicked for me that what do I really want to do with my free time?
That's right.
Right. When I have free time on the weekends or on those rare evenings during the week, when I'm not exhausted and I have free time, what do I really want to do with that time? Do I want to spend it for chores, going grocery shopping? And not to say that those are bad things, because it's just part of adulthood, right? But at the same time, I think it comes down to an individual choice of what do you want to spend your time and money on, right? Those two can be allocated to bring you different outcomes, and maybe the same outcomes, but they're just different ways of getting it.
That's right. And I've never talked about this. Let's see if I could do it in my second language, an immigrant. No one know when's the last day or the last hour that we have. Talking, we never know. Nobody knows. So every day actually is a gift. And somebody say a present, right? It's a present. That's why we call present or presents. Right? Depends. So for me, my dad always say that if money can fix it, it's not a problem. Go ahead, pay for the service, pay for what it takes, and give you the freedom. It's not only time freedom. The mental freedom is really important.
Yeah.
Because if you're dinging around, I haven't done it, or right? It's draining your energy.
Yeah.
It's draining your creativity. It's draining your attitude in front or being with the closest loved ones who is at your home, because that thing is draining you. Now, of course, sometimes it's too big a gap of paying. If I pay this, my bank account is going to drain. And well, between that and that, I can't make that decision. I got it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's very small.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really small. Go ahead, do that. Take care of it. Bounce back with energy.
Yeah.
Bounce back with the time. When I'm at leisure, when I'm relaxed, I'm a better person. That's joyful. That's happiness. And that will influence, because of me, it impact the people around me, and especially my family.
Yeah. The instance I'm thinking of here that kind of demonstrates that is right before COVID-19. My husband and I, we got new backsplashes put up in the kitchen, right? And it's not a big kitchen. So in many sense, I think a lot of people could have said, well, what you could have done it yourself, or, that's an option. And I think many people would enjoy doing it themselves. But the thing is, I know for a fact that I would hate doing it. And even though, my husband doesn't have experience putting up backsplash, but it's something he can figure out. He's very handy. He's really good with his hands. But at the same time, it's how do we want to spend time together? How do we want to spend time together on the weekends? I know that if he's doing it, I will feel guilty if I don't help him, but I know I will hate it. And it'll take us at least 2-3 weeks to get it done with what contractors can do in one weekend. And so we just made the decision that, it's going to cost more by paying someone. But the trade-off is that we'll get probably weekends back. We'll get time back with, for each other. It's just worth it in the end, right? And the gap between of the cost was not so much where the decision, was difficult.
That's right.
Yeah.
What can money buy?
Yeah.
It's really your convenience, so that you can show up as like you said, as a better person in a relationship, of course, without bankrupting you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key.
So one thing that I have noticed, maybe a little more recently than before, is, so I grew up as a third culture child. So my family and I, we lived in Hungary for many, many years. So I grew up there. I went to an American school, but, I still have, my family system is still rooted in the Chinese culture. So in many ways, I've seen money being interpreted in so many different ways. And I had to kind of define for myself what money is for me and my relationship with money. So I'm curious because you proudly identify as immigrant. So what have you seen in terms of what's different here with money and how money is treated, the relationship, and versus maybe across other cultures? And what are some things that is the same?
Wow, that's a long, loaded question. Let's see if I can remember every single piece. And if not, please remind me.
Sure.
So I guess there is not a lot difference among culture, but among generations.
Okay.
When I was born, remember I'm in my late 50s. So when I was born is in the 1960s, right? So that time, born and raised in Hong Kong is still growing trying to become a developed country. That time is not part of China yet. It's a colony under United Kingdom, if you recall.
Yep.
So I can say that I said I was born into a the mid-level family.
Yeah, like middle class. Yeah.
We were very poor compared to today's eyes.
Mm.
The
were or weren't?
We were. So how do I look at it and define it? So what toys do you play with? Of course, we don't have Barbie. We don't have all these. So once in a while we will have Campbell soup. So we polish the soup can so that it's not scratching or cutting your hand. And we drill holes at the end of the two can, pull a string, run as far as possible, tighten the string so that I can hear you. It's called telephone. Today, if kids are born in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, what's that? Don't you have an iPhone?
Right.
We just don't. And only in Chinese New Year, if we are lucky, I was offered either to choose a new outfit right before Chinese New Year because we need to go Happy Chinese New Year and receive the red pocket. So we want to look better. So either a outfit that's a dress for me or a pair of shoes.
Yep. I remember
I have
that.
both.
Yeah.
I always choose outfit in general until my shoes are broken because I thought there were so many adults running around in these greetings, right? Chinese New Year greetings. They can only look at my head and my upper part. It also applied to Zoom today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So we were so poor. So my mom is a super saver because every single penny is not easy.
Yeah.
So that's the generation. That's why I save. My mom would save 30 to 40% of her income.
Mm-hmm.
You learn from culture, right? You learn from who you are together with, who raised you, how you brought up. So today, when I come to America, of course, it's similar in Hong Kong too, because the generation become richer and more well off. They can afford more for themselves and their next generation. It's easier to be on the consumer side, spending. Yeah. Oh, I want that. Amazon. Oh, I want that.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I can walk to Nordstrom and get it, right?
Yeah.
If I can't wait for it to be shipped to me. So it's more like today, many of the developed country or places, it's more consumer, kind of towards the consumer thing.
Yeah.
Instead of saving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 2 cents and observation.
That's really interesting. I'm smiling in my head and I'm also kind of overjoyed because I feel like there's a lot of parallels between us. Even though you talk about the generations, I think that there's still a lot of that culture underpinnings, right, from our backgrounds. So even though I grew up in Hungary, I was born in China. So I lived there until I was about maybe 7. And then my mom and I, we followed my dad all the way out to Hungary. But I remember being a child, even before 7 years old, right? And as a child, I had no sense of whether we were rich or poor, right? And then looking back, my mom would say, compared to other people, we had more money, right? We weren't rich, even by the standards back then, but we had more money. But when you look at it from today's perspective, it seemed like we were super poor. But as a kid, I did not feel poor, right? And kind of like what you said about getting new outfits, during New Year. So what was really interesting is that one of the defining factors of whether my parents were doing okay financially was that they could buy me clothes from the store.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Some years we didn't have any, so we were kids, right? We were so disappointed.
Yeah. And I had cousins who their moms were still making their clothes, but I got my clothes from the store. And that was apparently one of the defining factors of how well you were doing. Of course, today, when you look at China's a completely different world, right? Versus when I was there, when I was 7. Today, it's a booming culture, economy. Most people are just rising up and up and in the economic class. Very different world. But looking back and you look at the way we lived, it's like, oh my gosh, you didn't have running hot water. You couldn't take a shower just whenever you wanted. And for a long time, we didn't have a telephone. But as a child, at the time, you didn't feel poor because it just was, things were just different. So I find that really interesting how we have some of those similar backgrounds in terms of how when we were raised, we had a different view of wealth and versus poverty versus when you look at that time from today's lens.
That's good. You just reminded me something that I forgot for a long time. When I was a kid, maybe up to under 10-year-old, we don't have hot water in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have a sink or a tub. So there is this big basin. When we need to take a bath, I remember mom has to go to the kitchen to boil hot water.
Yeah.
So boiling water mixed with cold water. Now we have warm water. You have to quickly take a bath, especially in the winter, because there's
there's no heat.
No heat. Yeah, that's you easily catch a cold. So you have to do quickly, right? The hair and everything.
Yeah, it's so.
I just reminded. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and actually, what's really fascinating to me is that, when you look at because you say you were kind of middle class, right? And in many sense, we were middle class too in China, at least at that age. And then when we moved to Hungary, Hungary wasn't a very rich economy at the time in the early, mid 90s. But they still had running hot water. So it was interesting to me as a child, and even interesting to me now as an adult, of what middle class and lower middle class looks like in each different countries. Like when I first moved to the US, the concept of washing your dishes in a dishwasher was seen as a luxury, right? But here, almost everybody has a dishwasher, and it's almost it's almost like table stakes that when you do dishes, you put that in the dishwasher.
That's right.
And everyone has running hot water. Well, I don't want to say everyone, but most people do. And it's something that's just kind of a given versus, me growing up, little kid, even in Europe, we didn't have dishwashers, but, especially in China at the time. Now, this was before all the economic boom. All those things were seen as so foreign and just so much like wealthier and richer. But when you translate it into here at that time, this was maybe still very middle class or even lower middle class.
Yeah. So, really, everything is relative. So, when you don't have a comparison.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I want you to touch on before we kind of start closing up is, what are some trends you're seeing with people in terms of their relationship with money and how they're managing money today? Because one of the things that I hear about, especially in the US, is that, people love using their credit cards, and our credit card debt in this country is just, it's an insanely high number, and it's just, it speaks to kind of people's money practices. So you as an expert, as a financial advisor, what are some trends you're seeing in terms of money practices, and what would you recommend people actually do instead?
Wow. That's a big question. I think some of the things that we see is definitely the saving rate has been, being stable at least until pre-COVID. It's way better than 10 years ago. And remember the last big, huge crisis was the
Yep.
subprime mortgage burst in 2008, 2009. So people actually learn from that lesson. That's so great. Every time when we see something bad happen, we learn. Both individuals and company, they learn. Now we need to have a cash reserve. Should something happen, we can be able to tap into that, right? So whether you call it emergency fund for a family like yours and mine, or a specific bucket inside company, we cannot be running zero or waiting for our customer to pay us so that we can pay our vendors. That's not the formula. The good companies that we know of, they really have a strong reserve of cash that help them to be super resilient in times like this. They don't need to okay, do I need to mortgage the building right now? I just pay off. This is my company building. Or do I need to, borrow from my 401k? No, you don't. If you have a reserve, of course, can we do better? We can. And I'm just very joyful and happy to know that many of the millennials, actually, they wanted to learn about money, but just wanted to find a means or way to be able to find more information. And you look very young. I don't want to guess your age, and we are not here to discuss age here. But millennials, actually, they research a lot. They do a lot of research, right? I mean, other than they want to text you and even they sit next to you, that's another one. They did a lot of research, but what paralyzed them is there's so many things when you Google how to manage money or how to save. Well, there's a million things that's come through. How many pages did you see in your Google search or any type of search engine? But the most important thing is what is applicable to me. I know there's a million information, million ways to look at it. Some of them look similar. Some of them look very different. Some of them are contradicting, right? Which one is for me? So I guess they are at a place where they're saying, you know what? I want to learn more. Can I find an expert whom I can trust to talk about this, to have some conversation or consultation? And I'm seeing that happening. And that's how I was seeing a couple of the colleagues who is in the millennial group in my office. Their videos, very short videos about money, is getting a lot of good traction. And people are paying attention to those, whether they want to show who they are looking at this or not, doesn't matter. We're giving them a means to find out more. And doesn't need to be working with us, but if they can find somebody that they can trust and talk through what is in their head and create a very top level idea of top 3 things. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. That will change their life. And as you and I know, it's all about not time, but timing, how much time you have in the market. When you're a millennial, you're so young, you have 20, 30, perhaps 40 years. Imagine what you can do.
Yeah.
You're saving up $100 or $50 today.
Yeah, that sounds so optimistic. And I really enjoyed this conversation, and it kind of went a little bit different than I imagined because we started connecting on the culture piece, which I really enjoy. And I would hope that people are also learning from this too. So as we draw to a close, here's kind of what I got out of our conversation is that, money can buy happiness. What it can also buy is the freedom for you to spend your time doing the things that matter, and also give you the mental freedom to stay refreshed and to connect and self-reflect. And that a lot of the whole idea of money buying you happiness and freedom really starts out with you and you figuring out what's important to you, what your goals are, what you're looking for, what's important to you. And you kind of related that to the resources and the support things out there, right? There's so much out there, and I can resonate with that. Like when I look up best ways to manage money, you have 20 or 30, 40 different experts who all have like 3-4 books on this, but it's about finding, again, like what's important to me, where do I want to go in life, how do I want to craft my happiness with money, and what's the advice that's going to help me get there. So as I always like to end the podcast with something that's uplifting for people. And I think this has been really uplifting. But if what's the one thing you recommend people do if they walk away from this conversation? What's the one thing they could start thinking about or start doing?
You don't need to be Martha Stewart to start cooking. You don't need to be a financial advisor or a Warren Buffett to be in charge of your money. All it takes is just start. Don't look behind, look today and forward. You can change what happened. You have the power to change now. If you decided to take charge, the resources will come to you. The decisions is made. Things fall into places.
Yeah. That's a great note to end on. And if people want to know more from you, either they want to start getting advice from you or getting to hear you talk more, because you have a fascinating story. And I've heard you in other public speaking events. If they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
For finances and money, please contact me at alice@bpgnetwork.com.
All right, thank you. And for those of you listening, that was my dog barking right there. So this is what happens when you're working from home. You just have these natural disruptions. So thank you so much, Alice. This was so much fun. So many people find you very inspirational, and I fully see why. The first time I heard you speak, I thought, wow, what an interesting lady. So folks, I hope you found this helpful and that this resonated with you. Again, Alice's contact information is in the screen below, and so is mine. If you have a comment, if you have some feedback, if you have some other best practices that you're doing, drop me a comment below. And if this was really helpful to you or you thought it was interesting, like the video, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you know what's coming up. Thank you again for watching. Thank you, Alice. And stay tuned, folks.